where I play, as long as I go number one in the draft.
From the Erie Otters, Connor McDavid.
From the London Knights, Mitch Marner.
From the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings, Nolan Patrick.
This is Tracking the Draft with Craig Button.
He checks an enormous amount of boxes. Nobody in this draft did more with less. I absolutely love him. It's not his skills that anybody's concerned about. It's that playing attitude. And quite frankly, it's really poor.
Speeding towards the future of the NHL.
From the U.S. Development Program, Jacob Truba.
From Färjestad of the Swedish Elite League, Jonas Brodin.
From the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
He could play in the NHL next year. He's one of those guys.
Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Tracking the Draft with Craig Button. This is episode 12 of season 3, and the director of scouting for TSN and former NHL GM Craig Button will join us very shortly. This is a show where the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed and proudly broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We do a top shelf talent, a next wave, and a time machine. Let's get to who these players are this week. Pavel Mintyukov is the defenseman with Saginaw in the OHL. Horse Lake Scouting has this prospect. We'll give you an interesting tidbit about this player and the UFHL open market a little bit later, thanks to our hockey guru, Larry Fisher. He's having a great season, and Craig's going to make a bold statement, I believe, about this player. I know he really, really likes him, and he has him ranked 20th. We'll find out where he is ranked in the upcoming Craigslist rankings. The new rankings will come out next week. In our next wave, it's goaltender Tyler Brennan of the Prince George Cougars. Alpine Prospects has this player, and a rare North American player for Alpine Prospects. 3 shutouts in the 20 wins that Prince George has this year. So they're a young team, not great if you're just going by numbers, although that save percentage for a team with only 20 wins is pretty good. This is a guy who I think is going to go a little bit higher than a lot of people. I know it says unranked there by Craig. He'll have a mea culpa on that one. He has as well. And in Time Machine, we're talking about Cole Sillinger. Mr. Hattrick. More hat-tricks than his dad had. He had none. Mike Sillinger. Cole is with Columbus in the NHL. He's also with the Tornadoes of the UFHL. He was 12th overall, and he has 11 goals, 10 assists in 57 games. And we'll find out from Craig just why Cole has been able to have such a great adjustment to the National Hockey League already. Just an absolutely awesome story. This show is proudly presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Make sure you check out UFFsports.com. You can become a scout. You can track the same players that Craig does. And Craig joins us on the UFHL Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League hotline. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game. And we have so much great programming going on. We are now on Twitch. We have a Twitch channel, Ultimate Fantasy Sports. Make sure you head there, subscribe, and check out our great shows. We'll be doing something with this show in that format. Not exactly sure just what yet, but all of our great shows, whether it's baseball, basketball, or hockey, will be on there. You'll also be able to see them on their YouTube channel as well, UFSN. So some great places to get some live programming, and then you can check them out later on. We're going to do some watch-alongs, a lot of fun, a lot of viewer involvement. So it is going to be awesome. If you would like more information about Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network and how you can join us in our journey, it's UFSN at UFFsports.com, and you can get your programming on our network. All right, without any further ado, let's get to it now with the Director of Scouting for TSN, Mr. Craig Button.
Here he is, the Director of Scouting for TSN, former GM of the Calgary Flames, and a Stanley Cup champion with the Dallas Stars. Plus, he's a sharp-dressed man with a heart of gold and a passion to match it. Craig Button.
Craig, the NHL trade deadline is coming up. That means the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League trade deadline is coming up. And before we get into the prospects that we're going to talk about today, let's discuss some of the prospects that we have dealt from a perspective of Duckman's domination to get some great players. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is that when the trade deadline comes around, I hope to be sitting back with my Duckman's domination coffee mug, enjoying my mint tea, and having a lot of our deals done early. And I think we've done a pretty good job. We've traded out some quality prospects, Nikita Chibrikov, Josh Doan, Ty Dellandrea, P.O. Joseph, and Arthur Kaliev, who, could be the best of the bunch. But these are the players we are getting back to make a run next year. Darcy Kemper solidifies our goaltending. Danton Heinen, who's a quality player and already chipped in. By the way, Kemper had a 46-save shutout in his Duckman's debut. Bo Horvat, which can be a cornerstone. And we get a first-round pick in 2023. How do you, when you're evaluating dealing prospects for proven NHL players, how do you go about evaluating? When I send you these deals that we're looking at, how do you do them and how did you approach them in the NHL?
Well, I think honestly, Dean, you got to approach it the same way. You're looking at Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat's a key player. You already know what he is in the NHL. He's not a fringe player. He's not a bottom of the lineup player. He's a key player. He's an important player. So now, when you're trying to get an important player, what do you think? You're getting him for nothing? You're getting him for C-level prospects? You bet when the name Bo Horvat comes up, you better be ready to talk about real significant prospects because he's a real significant player. Dean, you and me talk about this, and I now with NHL trade deadline coming up, and I talk about, there's lots of people that talk like contenders. You know what they really are? They're pretenders. They don't walk the walk. They love to talk the talk. Oh, the price is too high. Well, really, the price is too high. Really? Okay. So you're happy being where, I can't believe they asked for that. Like JT Miller comes to mind. I keep hearing about, JT Miller. And I go, well, you know what? I said, you can trade any player. You know what I say. I always believe, don't say no. Consider what it is. You don't have to say yes, but consider what it is. So, somebody says to me, well, JT Miller, what would I said, well, if I'm the Vancouver Canucks, there's only one way I'm trading JT Miller, and that's if I get a top pair defenseman back. They go, wow, gee. So Colorado, yeah, I said Bo Byram. That's who I'm asking for if I'm Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvine. They go, well, they'll never trade Bo Byram. I said, fair enough. You're not getting JT Miller then. Good. I'm not saying you have to do it, but if you're not ready to hear the name on the other end of the line, it's not going to happen. I don't know how many times I've told this story, but it never gets old. When we were looking to get Joe Nieuwendyk in Dallas, okay, Al Coates said Jerome McGinley. That's what we need to talk about. Well, do you think we wanted to hear Jerome McGinley's name? No, I don't think so. But as we kept tracking down the path, it became a case of, okay, what does Joe Nieuwendyk mean for our team? What does Jerome McGinley mean for our team? What does it mean not to have Jerome? What does it mean not to have Joe Nieuwendyk? All these other young players we had, and we were getting Joe Nieuwendyk. So I guess we were going to have to give up a really good prospect. And we did. We gave up a Hall of Famer. But if you're not prepared to do that, then you're going to just be fiddling with the dials. And like I said, talking like a contender, but acting like a pretender.
Well, two things that were really cool about these deals. One is one of them was made with the Stallions, which Ian Constable is the GM and one of the owners, I believe. And so it was a true East End collaboration with our World Juniors. So that was kind of neat. And the other thing that was really important is, Jeff Skinner is producing, but he's making $9 million for a bunch of years. And we also got rid of Brett Connolly's contract for next year. So, Darcy Kemper's going to need a raise next year. And Bo Horvat in a couple of years is going to need a raise. So we have created cap space for those players in the future. And in a cap world, if you're not worrying about the next year, you're going to be toast at some point.
Bottom line is the salary cap and financial implications are just as much a part of the discussions as anything. So when you present those different areas and you talk about, looking down the road and saying, okay, we need some space in our salary structure to sign these players, And yeah, it's giving up a younger player or a prospect, but you're talking about Bo Horvat. We're talking about Bo Horvat. Like, at the end of the day, and we went back, and I've talked about this all the time. Jerome McGinley, when we traded him, was not going to be able to do for our team what Joe Nieuwendyk did. And Joe Nieuwendyk was not going to be able to do for the Calgary Flames at that point in time what Jerome was going to be able to come in and represent and ultimately do. They were at different stages of their careers, and our organizations were at different stages. So, you can't just say, oh, you traded Joe Nieuwendyk, oh, well, the Flames should have kept him. Well, he was holding out. He was done there. And we were at a different place. And Jerome, as good a player and as good a prospect, he wasn't going to help us like Joe did. So you got to consider all those other things. And then as you talk about the salary cap, it's a big factor. And what's interesting too, Dean? People talk about the salary cap today. And I hear lots of people talk about the salary cap, and most of the people are not informed. I can tell you this, over the course of the NHL, and I'm talking about, 2000, even prior to 2000, when the CBA changed in 1994-95, the financial structure of the league changed, and it changed dramatically. Vast majority of teams were on salary cap budgets. Like, the big market teams, and there was 5, 6, maybe 7 of them, team will move in, move out. But the other teams in the league were all on salary cap budgets. So, the salary cap has been in place long before the salary cap was in place.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. All right, let's jump into our top shelf talent today. Pavel Mintyukov plays for Saginaw of the Ontario Hockey League, and Horse Lake Scouting has this prospect. Interesting tidbit from our hockey guru, Larry Fisher. Mintyukov was available in our futures auction in August 2020 and was one of only 2 among 140 prospects that didn't get bid on and ended up in the open market. The other was Nick Pierre. So they got a really good deal. They got this player for $20 worth of score coin. He has 12 goals, 33 assists in 53 games, and he's ranked 20th on the Craigslist. Now, you have a new Craigslist coming out, so it'll be interesting to look at that. But would you consider him a straight-up offensive producing defenseman, or is there much more to his game?
I think there's much more to his game. I mean, obviously, the offense stands out. And let me just be very clear with you. My next list comes out next Wednesday or next Tuesday prior to the CHL Prospects game. He's in the top 10. He might be the best defenseman in the draft. Now, I still have Simon Nemec ahead of him, right shot defenseman, but Mintyukov is not far behind. I can tell you that right now. He's not far behind. He's an outstanding skater. He's got excellent vision, excellent awareness, makes plays at the right time. He knows how to open up space. Like, he can beat pressure defensively. He knows how to open up the ice in the offensive zone, and he defends very well. He defends with a real straight up competitiveness. Like, he's there. He's in your space. He's not looking to back off. And once he gets stronger and more physically mature, he's going to be even better in that regard. But this is a really, really good player. This is a player, like I said, that I think could be in the argument for best defenseman in the draft. That's how good he is. But his game obviously stands out on the offensive side, which puts him in the elite category. But he's not just an offensive defenseman.
That's good, because sometimes people look at that and they say, wow, this guy is very good offensively, but how good is he in his own zone? And I've heard he's a very good skater. That obviously helps him. Do you have an NHL comparable when you look at this player?
You know what? I have a couple. I have a couple of players that I would compare him to. And in terms of style and the way he plays the game, and actually, I have a trio, and I wrote down the trio the other day because I watched him play on Monday night, the most previous time. And I have 3. I have a trio of players that I think his game resembles, beginning with Ivan Provorov, who's in Philadelphia, Noah Dobson with the New York Islanders, and Devin Taves with the Colorado Avalanche. And you look at those players, none of them overwhelm you, physically, right? But they're in the right spots on the ice all the time. They think the game. They understand the game at so many different levels. And so when I watch Mintyukov play, those are the guys that come to mind. You know, I love Provorov, I love Dobson, I love Devin Tays, and you watch how they performed in their NHL careers. That's why I think that when it's all said and done, Mintyukov might very well be, you know, amongst the best defensemen to come out of this draft. And, you know, when you got that type of game and you understand what you are and who you are, you know, I think that, you know, it puts you at a different level. And that's and I'll refine those comparables in terms of type, and maybe somebody stands out a little bit more than another player. You know, the other thing that I always laugh at, and I laugh. So, and I remember doing the draft, and Cale Makar went 4th overall. And the comment, oh, well, defensively, there's concerns about him defensively. And I remember saying on the broadcast, I said, well, how would anybody know there's concerns? He has the puck the whole game long. How would you know if there's a concern about his defensive play? Like, you know, you can throw the line out there, but, like, there's no application. There's no real-world evidence that because he had the puck the whole game, right? Like, you know, so, like, do players need to develop? Do players need to understand, you know what, you know, spacing and all those things? Yeah, they do. But, like, what I want to know, what player not named Bobby Orr came into the National Hockey League and didn't have to work on his defensive play? What defenseman? Like, they're none of them.
You know, the Provorov comment is such a neat one. I remember getting a text from a Brandon Wheat King scout the first day Provorov stepped on the ice in Brandon, and he couldn't believe it. He was just like wowed by not that he was like going end to end, he just did everything so technically well, and you know, I think has continued to do that. Do you see the same things? I'm not sure if Mintyukov is a guy that stands out like the best player out there all the time, or is he just continually making smart, solid plays?
I think the way you described Ivan is there's a lot of similarities in Pavel's game. I really do. I think that's very appropriate to talk about it, right? And again, like, you know, you know, there's a lot of talk about Ivan Provorov in Philadelphia. You know, he's not having a great season. Oh, he might. I can tell you what. If I'm a manager in the National Hockey League and I'm hearing that Ivan Provorov might be available, I am phoning Chuck Fletcher every single day. Because I'll tell you what, the problem with Ivan Provorov is not Ivan Provorov. The problem with Ivan Provorov is the Philadelphia Flyers are no good, and they don't have support. And he thinks the game at a different level than most of the players on his team, right? So now there's no predictability, there's no acumen and everything like that. So of course it's going to affect a player like Provorov. Bottom line is that guy's a top-notch player. And I think Mintyukov is a real similar type, has a very similar type approach to the game as does Provorov.
I love it. I love to hear that. All right, let's move to the next wave, and we're talking about Tyler Brennan, a goaltender with Prince George of the Western Hockey League. Alpine Prospects has him, a rare North American prospect for Alpine, which is based in Europe. So they dipped into the North American pool. 3.47 GAA and a 904 save percentage in 33 games. And I'm guessing he's going to be ranked on the Craigslist. And I want to know how you've seen him progressed from maybe the start of the year to now. I know he didn't get to play a lot of hockey last year like most people, but how have you seen his progression?
Well, you see that Craigslist rank that says NR, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that NR is just is a notation for complete idiot. That's what I was. You know, I've watched Tyler Brennan play. And I don't know, you know, how I ended up, you know, not getting him ranked. And I think at that time, 64. He's a good, and when right after I did that NR, it was like, Craig, what are you doing? Like, I went and watched him play. I'm going like, you really, Craig? You really did that? I did. So, you know what? Acknowledge a big mistake and a big blunder. Bottom line is when I watch Tyler play, everything about his game just screams, you know, he's got developmental areas to work on. He doesn't have inherent weaknesses. I think he reads the game really well. I think he moves really well. I think that he's got a really good understanding of his positioning and where the next challenge may come from. I think that he gets himself into the right positions at the right times where he doesn't break down in terms of his positioning. A lot of times goaltenders move and they're opening up something. I don't see that with Tyler. I see a goaltender that's got really good, strong economy of movement and real good technical acumen. What he needs is time. What he needs is just time to develop and time to hone that game. And, you've heard me say this, but it applies. And, pitchers have to learn how to pitch. Goaltenders have to learn how to goaltend. I think Tyler Brennan, with everything he has, the physical stature, the athletic ability, the mental acumen, the understanding technically of what he has to do, to me, that's everything you want in a goaltender. And I think that everything that he needs, give him some time, give him some direction, that I think he's got a chance to be a number one goaltender in National Hockey League.
I like that. You know what I call it? I call it and I go back to this, it's the Trevor Kidd factor. And Trevor Kidd was on a really bad Brandon Wheat King team and stood out and was drafted high. And his career didn't pan out the way he wanted him to, but the fact that he wasn't on a good team made him stand out that much more, faced a lot of shots. And Tyler Brennan has 3 shutouts on a team that has 20 wins. That is pretty good for me. Is he a guy that stands out for PG when you watch them?
Yes. And I think that that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that goaltender. We can look at the numbers and make our own judgments on it, but you're watching him play. You're watching how he gets challenged. I mean, their team, Mark Lamb is got a very young team there. They're competitive. He understands where they're at. But Tyler Brennan gives them a chance. He young players are going to make mistakes, goaltenders included, but because he's a little bit more mature, has a little bit more notches on the wood block, he's able to, clean up some of the mistakes that happen in front of him. And that keeps his team in games, and that keeps his team, in the competitive fight. He's going to be better next year. When I look back, Dean, I look back at Thatcher Demko. Thatcher Demko is a brilliant young goaltender with the Vancouver Canucks. You look at where he's at now. I mean, Thatcher is 26, going to be 27 later on this year. And he's top notch. He was a second round draft pick. And it took him some time. I mean, Thatcher had the ability. Thatcher needed to work on some of those areas of his game to just put it all together. But boy, as he put it together and the way he plays, there's no reason for me to believe he can't do this for the next 6, 7, 8 years. I think Tyler Brennan, has a style of game like Thatcher Demko. So if you can be, and so now somebody might ask me, well, why wouldn't you rate him higher? Maybe I should. Like when I say higher, I'm thinking second round, but in the top 45 or whatever. But maybe when you start looking at Thatcher Demko and comparing him to that, why shouldn't you have him in your top 32?
Yeah, we'll see.
It's a fair commentary. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll see when the next Craigslist comes out. Now, he is on Hockey Canada's radar. He's been part of that program a couple of times. How has that benefited him? Because, he's on a team that you mentioned is young in Prince George. Then he goes to those Hockey Canada programs, gets to play with the best of the best, not only for his confidence, but just for his ability to play with those type of players has to have helped him.
Well, you talk about confidence. That's a big thing too, Dean. And that certainly helps in your development. Also, when you're testing yourself against better players, understanding that, like, hey, this is how it's going to more resemble as you go higher up the levels. It more resembles what you're going to be facing as you try to get to the National Hockey League. And then the benefit of working with different goaltending coaches and hearing different views. Like if you think about somebody, and I'll just use the example a couple years ago. At the World Junior. I mean, you're able to come to the World Junior tournament, right? And Taylor Gauthier was there, who happened to play with Tyler in Prince George. You had Dylan Garand and you had Devin Levi. Well, they get the benefit of Jason LaBarbera. Right. And Jason LaBarbera can instruct in ways and give you some things into your game that can help you develop and understand different things. So playing for Hockey Canada also gives you that benefit as well. So, it's just that there's layers of there's layers of real significant advantages by playing for Team Canada that are not just on the ice. They also extend into other areas. And I think for Tyler, that's really important. I think it's important for any player.
I totally agree. Well, Craig joins us courtesy of the UFHL Hotline. Scouting is a huge part of the platform, lifeblood of the franchises in the UFHL, because any free agent, any prospect goes through a scout. So you need to get in the game where you own the game. Start putting your scouting talent to good use. If you go to a lot of games and you start noticing players, get on that UFFF site, register as a scout, and start listing players. You can be an independent scout. You can form a partnership with an existing franchise. And in our platform, once you register as a scout, you get to scout in every sport. So if you go to a lot of football games down in the States and watch college or baseball or basketball, get in the game where you can own the game. Reach out for more information on Twitter at the UFHL. DMs are open, and get into it. It is so much fun watching these players get listed time and time again. And now we take a trip in the time machine and we go back to 2021 draft. We're talking about Cole Sillinger, a center with Columbus of the NHL. The Tornadoes have him in the UFHL and benefiting most recently by a hat trick, 11 goals, 10 assists in 57 games as the 12th overall pick last year. He recently had his first hat trick, and now, I'm sure you've seen it before, has more hat tricks than his dad, Mike, who played in the NHL. But this is just a terrific story. Why has Cole Sillinger, do you think, been able to make such a quick adjustment so far, seemingly, to the NHL?
Yeah, well, I mean, the adjustments, if you can't think and you can't process the game quickly and accurately, I don't care how much skill you have, you're not going to be successful at the NHL level. You might be able to play, a role, but you're not going to be successful. And Cole Sillinger has outstanding hockey sense. He understands. He's got really good feel. He took a big hit a couple weeks ago, and you start to go, oh, geez, that's a young kid that did. But you know what? Good players get hit. And we've seen good players get hit. We saw Nathan McKinnon take a big hit earlier this year. What are we saying, that him at 26 years of age, he's too young? Body checking is part of the game. We've seen some big hits over the course of many, many games and many, many years. So Cole has outstanding sense and feel for the game. And it's with the puck. It's without the puck. He can play on the power play. He can play on the penalty kill. He can play left wing. He can play center. There's so many different areas that Cole can contribute on your team. And that's been evident from the first time I ever saw him play as a 16-year-old in Medicine Hat. I mean, if you want to go out and watch Cole Sillinger play and you're looking for this player that's going to go up and down the ice and wow you and toe drag you and dangle, you're not going to see that. But one of the things when I first saw Cole play, and it's one of the things that always comes to mind, because one of these days we're going to have to do a time machine on Logan Stankoven, because he's another guy that comes to mind. And, same age, same draft. And now I look at, and I think back to Logan, and I think to Cole. You're watching a game and you keep going, who made that play? Oh, that's Sillinger. Oh, who made that play? That's Sillinger. That's Sillinger again. And then you keep going back and you keep seeing the same player making the same types of plays, and they're always the right plays, they're good plays, they're strong plays in every area of the game. And, then you assess, well, skating is good, his puck handling is good, he's competitive, he's hard, he doesn't get pushed around, and now you start to go, yeah, well, there's not a lot of, you hear this deal a lot, the wow factor. Well, if you're going for a wow factor on Cole Sillinger, you're going to leave every time going, there was no wow factor. But I'll tell you what, you want a player that's really effective and really competitive and really understanding of what each situation presents and how to handle it. Cole Sillinger's your guy.
So are you seeing anything new, different to his game, or is he just continually developing the skills he built up in junior and putting those to good use in the NHL?
Well, I think last year, too, going to the USHL really helped him. because it's a different style of league, right? And so it challenges you in different ways. And, a lot of times players that, they're coming from junior hockey or college hockey or in some cases the USHL, not often, or Europe, and they've been really good players over there. And but there's different aspects that maybe they haven't been exposed to or exposed to any great extent. I think by Cole playing in the USHL, he got exposed to a tighter, faster, harder, straight up and down game. Playing in junior in Medicine Hat, he was a really good player as a rookie. And, you watch these different areas and you go, okay, so he's benefited from that, and you can see how he handles that in the NHL. He's benefited from this area, and you see how that helps him in the NHL. I've talked about the hockey sense. I think when you have those abilities to understand what the challenges are going to be, then you understand also how to handle it and how to inject your game into the NHL. I think that's why, as an 18-year-old, he has been able to find a measure of success. It's because of some of those experiences, both in the USHL and in the Western Hockey League. I think these are all things that help a young player understand. Because when you get to the NHL, there's two things. You better show me that you can help our team win and be productive. And number two, you're playing against the best players in the world. You know what? Those are serious demands on a young player. Cole understands those, and I think he's benefited from the experiences of previous times and steps in the NHL and is very good. Very few 18-year-olds can find their way in the NHL. Cole's done a pretty good job, I would say.
And I think the other thing that sometimes gets overlooked, and I'm not saying this happens with everybody, but he had a dad who played in the NHL, and I know the game has changed, but he can help him and say, these are the things you're going to do, or if there's a rough patch, he can lean on his dad, or, just those kind of stories, whether you're growing up around the game and you're seeing kind of what it takes, or you can get that firsthand experience. Like I said, I don't think it automatically means a guy's going to have success, but I think it does give him an option that most players don't have, to be able to call their dad and say, this situation happened. What do you think?
Well, I mean, absolutely, that's going to help a young player. But what also is that Cole's been around the game because of his dad. Mm-hmm. So, there's also that factor that you're kind of, it's not new to you. It's new, but it's not new, if you know what I mean, right? Yep. So you've been in the dressing rooms, you've been around the game, now you can just come in and play, right? You're not like, oh my God, there is an awe factor. There is an awe factor for young players. I can't believe, oh boy, I'm in the NHL now. For Cole, he grew up in it and he's been around it. So there's probably not the same type of mystery surrounding his entry into the NHL. There's still going to be an awe. There's still going to be, oh, I'm excited to be here, but there's not a mystery. And I obviously, I think that helps. And certainly when you can turn to your father and ask him about different things, that's an added benefit, no question.
All right. Well, looking forward to a number of things. The top prospect game, as you mentioned, a new Craigslist, and of course the trade deadline. Duckman's domination still has a guy like Phil Kessel out there that, we could trade. We could also keep Kessel and get some playoff revenue if he gets traded in the NHL, or keep him for next year. But I know we'll still be looking at a lot of deals, and certainly we appreciate your knowledge and your input with Duckman's domination and high-level scouting, and of course this show right here. I'm also looking forward to doing a scouting tips and story time at some point. Maybe in a couple of weeks we'll throw that together, and some people can start asking you some questions about life in hockey, because I know you enjoy that as well.
I do, and I'm all in on that. And Dean, every week it's enjoyable. That being said, Prospects game is next Wednesday. We should do our next show Thursday.
That's a good point. Let's do that. We'll move this show to next Thursday. We can talk about the Prospects game and the new Craigslist. Great idea. Great executive decision.
Well, listen, sometimes a blind squirrel finds a nut.
Awesome stuff, Craig. Enjoy your week, and we'll talk real soon.
This is a serious message.
Craig Button joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Become a scout and make money while providing prospects to the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League.
what you talking about, mister?
Pay that man his money.
I'm your huckleberry.
Check out the details at www.uffsports.com.
It's serious.
I like it a lot.
I said we got a winner.
UFFS. You own the game.
All right, already looking forward to that top prospects game recap next week with Craig Button. And of course, a little bit after that, we'll do Craig's Counsel, where you can have your part in scouting tips and story time with Craig. If you have a question, whether it's about a past player or a current player or anything he's been involved with in the game of hockey, if you really want to suck up, ask him about the Michigan Wolverines. But send it to us, trackingthedraft@gmail.com. We have a bunch of questions from past shows that we didn't get to that we will include as well. But feel free to send in some new questions, trackingthedraft@gmail.com. If you have a question for Craig about a specific player or anything to do in the scouting world. And as mentioned, this show proudly being broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We want to be your one-stop fantasy sports shop, whether that's about the UFFS or just in general fantasy. If you have a show you'd like to get on the network, please reach out to us, UFSN@UFFsports.com. That's UFSN@UFFsports.com. You can follow @UFS Network on Twitter, where the DMs are open. And that is going to wrap things up for another show here on UFSN and Tracking the Draft. Thank you very much for watching the program. If you'd like to get it in audio format, just search for Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We have our podcast shooting out to all the different podcast places, so just search Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network and you can get all kinds of shows from all of our different hosts in the audio format, so you can listen to us on your commute if you'd like. Big thanks, of course, to UFFS and UFHL for being the driving force behind this show. And we wouldn't be here without the Director of Scouting for TSN, Craig Button, who's also the President of Hockey for High Level Scouting and the Director of Scouting for Duckman's Domination. Those in the UFHL, reach out. We're still willing to deal. And thanks very much for watching another edition of Tracking the Draft with the Director of Scouting for TSN, Craig Button. We'll see you next Thursday.